سيدنا ونبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا وزدنا علما وعملا يا رب العالمين. أما بعد، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. So inshallah we're going to be resuming our study regarding the fiqh of fasting, inshallah ta'ala. And I recommend everyone take notes down on your phones if you can, um, as there's going to be quite a few details. So I recommend, highly recommend, if you want to benefit from this dars, then you take some notes down, inshallah. Muhammad, can we get some paper from upstairs if possible? Yeah. So inshallah, when they bring the papers down, then I recommend everyone just gets a paper and a pen. طيب, so last week we spoke about the rulings pertaining to fasting. Namely, we spoke about the legislation of fasting. We spoke about the verses wherein Allah Azza wa Jal talks about the obligation of fasting. And we defined the word as-sawm in English, that what does it linguistically mean, and what was the legal definition of fasting. We said that it is to stay away, al-imsak, right? To stay away from those things that nullify the fast from the time of Fajr, so when Fajr enters, until the sun sets. And thereafter we spoke about some of the wisdoms and the virtues of fasting. We spoke about the conditions of fasting, the conditions that make fasting fard upon a person, and the conditions that make fasting valid for a person. And we went into a bit of detail with regards to a particular condition, and that is the intention. We spoke about the details with regards to intention when it comes to fasting. We also spoke about the different types of fasting in terms of their rulings. So which types of fast are fard, which types of fast are the sunnah, and so on and so forth. Today, inshallah, we're going to be continuing. And the first thing that we're going to talk about today is mustahabbatu siyam, actions that are preferable to do when you are in the state of fasting or when you intend to fast. So recommended actions of fasting. So you can write this down as the subheading, recommended actions of fasting. Now these recommended actions, they are either based upon a hadith or they are based upon legal deduction from the scholars. The first one being to partake in the pre-dawn meal. To partake in the pre-dawn meal, what we know as suhoor, right? The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in one hadith he mentioned, تَسَحَّرُوا فَإِنَّ فِي السَّحُورِ بَرَكَةً, right? That partake in suhoor, for indeed in suhoor there is blessings for you. And obviously the wisdom is quite obvious. The wisdom is that a person who takes part in suhoor, not only is he reviving a sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, but he is also providing his body with energy so that he can last the entire day without food and water, right? And this is the hikmah behind partaking in suhoor. Number two, the scholars mentioned that when it comes to suhoor, to delay the suhoor as much as possible, but obviously to ensure that you don't eat beyond the time of imsak, right? I.e., you don't eat beyond the time that your fasting starts. So let's say, for example, Fajr time, it starts at, let's say 4:30, yeah? So now to delay it, but to ensure at the same time, while you are delaying it, you don't go past 4:30. Because when 4:30 hits, then what will happen? The adhan of Fajr will be called, and this marks the beginning of your fast. So it's not permissible now for you to, continue fasting after Fajr time enters. Make sense? So we will delay the suhoor, and the reason why you delay it is because uh, you are again providing energy to the body, right? Just before the fasting begins, all right? And then when the fasting begins, that's it. You abstain from eating. Number three, when it comes to the end of the day, the end of fasting, when you're about to break your fast, as soon as the adhan of Maghrib is called, you start breaking your fast straight away, right? So what they say, ta'jilul fitr, to hasten in breaking the fast. Again, this does not mean that you break the fast before the time. Common sense, right? Don't say, oh, ta'jilul fitr. Yeah, so Maghrib Salah hasn't even entered, so you're gonna, mashallah. Yeah. ذهب الظمأ وابتلت العروق وثبت الأجر إن شاء الله. كيف ثبت الأجر? You know, right? So you have to make sure that you wait for Maghrib time to enter. Yeah. Some people get excited and say, تعجيل الفطر. Okay. So you have to wait for the Maghrib time to begin, for the adhan of Maghrib to be called, and thereafter you will break your fast. But you should not delay. Don't say, I'm going to wait 5 minutes. Some people do this. I'm going to wait 5 minutes just in case. Right? This is not from the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is, as soon as Maghrib time has been established, you break your fast straight away. All right? So you shouldn't wait 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes out of precaution, because there is no precaution. Nowadays, because of the technology we have, we can precisely know exactly when the sun sets. Right? Exactly when the sun sets. And when we know that, we look at the timetable, for example, the timetables are very accurate as well when it comes to the sunset time in particular, right? And if anything, you can even look at your phones, because they will tell you what time sunset is. So once sunset has been established, that the sun has set fully, this is when you will break your fast, because this starts the beginning time of Maghrib Salah. All right. Number 4, al-ikthar min al-dhikri wa tilawati al-Quran. Yeah, this is now more of a spiritual thing. That during your fast, you should remember Allah Azza wa Jal as much as possible. Yeah, abundance of dhikr, and at the same time, abundance of recital of the Quran, and also sadaqah, because these are things that complement each other. As I mentioned in the khutbah yesterday, we spoke about, those of you who attended my khutbah yesterday, we spoke about the virtues of fasting, the hikmah behind fasting and Quran, and how they go hand in hand. So both Siyam and Quran, they go hand in hand, they complement one another, which is why in the state of fasting you should also recite the Quran. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in one hadith reported or recorded by Imam Ahmad in his Musnad, he said that as-siyam wal-Quran yushaffi'ani lil-'abdi yawm al-qiyamah. Yeah, that the fasting and Quran will intercede on behalf of a person on the day of Qiyamah. Okay, so this is why we should try to do both. So while you are fasting, recital of the Quran and general dhikr, istighfar. Maybe you're at work, for example. If you're at work, maybe you can't open a mushaf and recite from the mushaf, right? But if your work is such that you can, let's say you're driving a van, for example, or whatever job you're doing, and it doesn't require much talking. That job doesn't require much talking. So let's say you're at a desk and you're just cracking on with the work, right? Or if you're at university and you're just cracking on with your work, you're studying, for example, right? There's no harm in you, while you are doing whatever you're doing, to keep your tongue busy in the dhikr of Allah Azza wa Jal, right? We should never look down upon these things, right? So this is why it's very important that we try to utilize every single second while we are in the state of fasting. Thereafter, number 5, al-ibti'ad an al-muharramat, to stay far away from forbidden actions, كالغيبة والنميمة والشاتمة, والمشاتمة. Yeah, that staying away from backbiting, staying away from slander, staying away from abusing each other, okay, verbally. So especially when it comes to the tongue. Again, I spoke about this yesterday in the khutbah, that there are some people who will fast, but the only thing they achieve from their fasting is hunger and thirst, nothing else. But there's some people, they spend the entire day, subhanallah, in ghiba, backbiting and slander and lying and abusing, right? Whereas, back in the day, Allah Azza wa Jal mentions in the Quran, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُم. Yeah, that fasting is prescribed upon you just as how it was prescribed upon those before you, the nations of the past. Which means we understand from this that the nations of the past also had fasting. But their fasting was different. For example, at the time of Isa alayhi salam, Zakaria alayhi salam, that era, the fasting was not only staying away from eating and drinking, but also speaking as well. Right? So this is why, for example, when Maryam alayhi salam found out that she was pregnant with Isa alayhi salam, Allah Azza wa Jal told her to to keep a fast. All right, so that when she goes out to the public with Isa alayhi salam, okay, who has just been born, people are now going to accuse her of committing zina because she's not married, right? So they're going to start accusing her of committing zina, and they're going to start, spoiling her reputation. So now when she went out, one of the things she said, yeah, that she said that I am fasting. فَلَنْ أُكَلِّمَ الْيَوْمَ إِنْسِيًّا. I'm not going to speak to anyone, right? I'm not going to speak to anyone. Why? Because I'm fasting. So their fast was not only staying away from food and drink, but also speaking as well. They weren't allowed to speak. So it's from the rahmah of Allah Azza wa Jal. Just imagine this was the case with our ummah. Yeah, just imagine we had to stay away from speaking as well. How difficult would that be? Subhanallah, it would be very difficult. Lakin min rahmatillahi Azza wa Jal, it's from the mercy of Allah Azza wa Jal that He has made it permissible for a fasting person to speak. However, we still stay away from speech from one perspective. We stay away from bad speech. Okay, and this is why it's very important that we adhere to this. Moving on, number 6, أن يجتنب الغضب, to stay away from anger. To stay away from anger and from anything that will lead to argumentation, that will lead to a fight, right? Whether it is a verbal fight, whether it is a physical fight, any type of fighting, dispute. Stay away from anything that will lead to a dispute. And the famous hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that when one of you is fasting, then he should not engage in any argumentation, no fighting. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, فَإِنْ سَابَّهُ أَحَدٌ أَوْ قَاتَلَهُ فَلْيَقُلْ إِنِّي صَائِمٌ. That if someone starts arguing with him, someone abuses him, someone fights with him, then the fasting person should say to that person who is trying to have a fight with him, I am fasting. Don't disturb me, I'm fasting. All right? So this is why it's very important, because again, the purpose of fasting is to control yourself. It's all about self-control. It's all about discipline. Now, if you get angry and you start fighting with people, then it goes against the objective of fasting. Objective of fasting is to hold yourself, to withhold yourself. And I mentioned yesterday in the khutbah as well, the statement of Jabir radiallahu anhu. That Jabir radiallahu anhu said that if you are fasting, فَلْيَصُمْ سَمْعُكَ وَبَصَرُكَ وَلِسَانُكَ. وَلْيَكُنْ عَلَيْكَ وَقَارٌ وَسَكِينَةٌ. He said that if you're fasting, then let your eyesight fast, let your hearing fast, let your tongue fast. And if you're fasting, then let there be upon you tranquility and composure in the way you act, right? Because fasting is all about discipline and self-control. So these are some of the things that the fuqaha mentioned with regards to the permissible, the recommended actions of fasting. Moving on to the disliked actions of fasting now. So these are, you can write it down as another subsection. مَا يُكْرَهُ لِلصَّائِمِ, that which is disliked for the fasting person. Number 1, to taste something, obviously without swallowing it, but to simply taste something and then spit it out for no reason, this is disliked. Why? Because there's no reason. Right? Very simple. There's no reason behind it, which is why you should avoid it. Now, the fuqaha talk about for a woman who is cooking. So the sisters who are listening at home, I don't know if there's any sister upstairs, but sisters who are listening, then pay attention here. Sisters, when our women folk are cooking, or if the men are cooking, right? I don't know if brothers are into, mashallah, cooking. Then you pay attention as well. Um, it is permissible to taste the food with the condition that you are not going to swallow it. So you put it on the tongue, right, and then you spit it out, just so that you know if there's anything missing in the food, right? Now this will not be disliked. Why? Because there is a need, there is a necessity, and that necessity is maybe if she does not taste that food, right, then it's going to cause harm. And what is that harm? Make she put a lot of salt in it, for example, right? Now no one's going to be able to have any iftar, right? That's a harm. Or on the other hand, there's no salt at all, and because of that, no one can eat it because it tastes dead. There's nothing, there's no taste, right? Again, no iftar. You're gonna have to get Uber Eats. You understand? So the scholars mention that for a woman, because there is an udhr, there is an excuse, there is a valid reason, it will be permissible for her to taste the food, but this does not mean that she has a bite and she swallows it, right? She will put it on her tongue and then spit it out. No swallowing. Very, very important. Okay, that you don't swallow it. The second disliked action is, youngsters do this. Youngsters do this. I remember when I was little, I used to do this as well. Okay, to gather your saliva, right? To gather your saliva and then swallow it. Yeah. Why? Because you're very thirsty. So what do some people do? They gather their saliva, like that, yeah, and then they will swallow it. Okay. This will not break the fast, obviously, because you're not drinking anything. It's nothing external. However, the scholars mention that it's going to be disliked. Don't do it. Right? We defined what makruh means last week. Makruh means those actions that you should avoid. Yeah, you shouldn't do it. Stay away from it. If you avoid it, you'll get rewards. Yeah, you avoid it, you'll get rewards. So you should not do this. Why? Because there's no reason behind this. You're feeling thirsty, that's the whole point. That's out in the middle of the day, 12 o'clock. You go for a 1 hour sprint or treadmill, uphill. You're thirsty. The rest of the day you're gonna, suffer. So stay away from any activity that would be a means of your weakness. All right. So these are some of the things that will be makruh in fasting. And lastly, to do any action that may lead to nullifying the fast. Okay, to do any action that will lead to nullifying the fast. Okay, and this is a very important point. Okay, and this is a very important point. If you are married, this for you. If you're not married, you can close your ears. If you are married, this for you. If you're not married, you can close your ears. All right. If you're married, listen. If you're not married, you can close your ears. If you're underage, yeah, leave the room. Now, so a common question comes up: when I'm fasting, can I hug my wife? Can I touch my wife? Can I hug my wife? Kiss my wife? Right? The answer is it depends. Right? If you have control over yourself and you don't have that fear that is going to lead to you doing other things, right? وَالْإِشَارَةُ تَكْفِي لِلْعَاقِلِ, right? Doing other things, then it will be fine for you to do that, because you don't have that fear that is going to you're going to get carried away, basically. Okay. But if you find that by hugging your wife, kissing your spouse, it will lead to other things, then it is going to be disliked, right? You should avoid it. And there's many ahadith talking about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how he would get intimate with his wife in terms of hugging his wife. Yes, there's a narration of Aisha radiallahu anha, okay, which shows the permissibility of doing it. So then Aisha radiallahu anha was asked that how come he hugged you, okay? And there's one narration that talks about kissing as well, right? How come he kissed you? So Aisha radiallahu anha said that there was no one who had more control than Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, which teaches us that if you have that control and you have that assurity that it's not going to lead to anything else, because we know obviously intimacy, sexual intimacy is not permissible while fasting, we know this. If you have fear that it's going to lead to that, then you should avoid it, right? Cutting off the roots, cutting off the means, basically. Okay. But if you don't have fear, then it will be permissible. So these are some of the things that the fuqaha mentioned with regards to what is disliked in fasting. Anything else, it is not going to be disliked. طيب. Now moving on, this is now the most important part of the dars, which is باب ما يفسد الصوم وما لا يفسده. Okay, those things that nullify the fast, those things that do not nullify the fast. Let's start off with those things that do not break the fast. Yeah, those things that do not break the fast. Number one, لو أكل أو شرب ناسيا. Yeah, if he drinks or eats forgetfully. Now, it's very important that we define two words in English here. One thing is forgetfully, nasiyan, and another thing is khata'an, mistakenly. There's a difference between the two. Can someone tell me what the difference is? What's the difference between forgetfully and mistakenly? Huh? But what's the difference between forget and mistake? The fuqaha talk about this. Can you see as in how the scholars go into a lot of detail? How do we define forgetfulness and mistakenly doing something? How do we differentiate? Yeah, at the back. Exactly. Excellent. Yes. Mistakenly means, for example, I don't have water next to me, but if you have water, let's say you're gargling or you're just rinsing your mouth. You consciously put water in your mouth, yes? You consciously put water in your mouth. And you're just gargling your mouth. But then by accident, what happened? A bit of water went down your throat. طيب? This is khata'an. This is mistakenly. Right? Forgetfully means you don't even realize you were fasting. You forgot you were fasting. Did you see the difference? Yeah? You forgot you were fasting, and because of that, you just started eating. Like, first couple of days, we're not used to fasting. So it's very common that people forget that they're fasting and they drink, and then later they realize, oh no, I'm fasting. Right? So the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentioned this in one hadith, that if a person forgetfully eats or drinks, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ أَطْعَمَهُ وَسَقَاهُ. Yeah? فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ أَطْعَمَهُ وَسَقَاهُ. Allah Azza wa Jal has fed him and has given him drink. طيب? I.e., in other words, it does not nullify the fast because you forgot. All right? And there's another hadith with Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that رفع عن أمتي النسيان. Okay, one of the things that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, the consequence of which has been raised from my ummah is forgetfulness. So if you forgetfully do something, then the sin of that or the consequences of that has been lifted from this ummah out of the mercy of Allah Azza wa Jal. Also, another thing that does not break the fast is obviously bathing, having a bath, having a shower. There's nothing wrong with it. Obviously, ensuring that nothing goes inside of your mouth. That's common sense. Putting oil on your hair does not break the fast. Putting kuhl. Yeah, everyone know what kuhl is? What's kuhl? إذا اكتحل. ما معنى اكتحل? Yeah, don't say eyeliner. It's not eyeliner. Kuhl? Yes, it's called antimony. All right, antimony in English. Antimony. So this is or in Urdu they call it surma. Yeah. So we call it surma in Urdu. All right, and that's basically you put. It's a substance that you put in your eyes. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would put it in his eyes, and apparently, wallahu a'lam, there's some medical benefits of this. It sharpens the eyesight. So applying kuhl does not break the fast. Also, another thing that does not break the fast is cupping. Yeah, ihtijam or hijama. Cupping does break the fast. There is an opinion that states that it does break the fast. However, the more predominant opinion is that it does not break the fast. Okay, and we're going to mention why later on. There's a principle that will help us, inshallah, define those things that breaks the fast and those things that does not break the fast. We'll come to that principle later. Also, things like a wet dream will not break the fast. Okay, so if you wake up in the morning, okay, you had a wet dream, it does not break the fast, even though you have started the fast already. So let's say you did your suhoor, etc., and then after Fajr you slept, and then you woke up and you had a wet dream. That does not break the fast. Okay, and again, there are many ahadith in respect to this. Moving on, inhaling smoke or steam, inhaling steam, if it is not done on purpose, yeah, bila sun'ihi, which basically means it wasn't done by your own doing. So, for example, if you walk into a room that just happens to have smoke, for example, and you have to pass by that room, okay, and you inhale that smoke. Now, one may ask here, why is this even a discussion? Because obviously, with steam, you have water vapors, right? Yeah, you have water vapors in that steam. You're inhaling that steam. Naturally, the water vapors will enter your body. And what happens? You'll find that your throat, if it was a bit dry, it won't be dry anymore. Okay? Now, let's say you're having a hot shower. You're having a hot shower. The steam of that hot shower is a side effect of that hot shower, yes? That will not break the fast. But an example of inhaling steam that will break the fast is, for example, if you go to a steam room and you decide to, mashallah, go to a spa on a spa day while you are fasting, which obviously you should try to avoid, okay? Don't go on a spa day while you're fasting. It's pointless, okay? So entering the sauna, for example, and going to a steam room, okay? This will nullify the fast. Why? Because you're inhaling, essentially you're inhaling water, right? But if you're having a shower, for example, that's different because that's not the primary objective. The primary objective is not to inhale the steam. The primary objective is to bathe. And obviously having cold showers, as in if you're brave enough to have cold showers, then alhamdulillah, right? But if you're not, then it's quite difficult. So this is another thing that the scholars mentioned. Moving on now. Okay, one more thing that the scholars mentioned is, if there's food that is stuck between your teeth, yeah, so let's say you had a really nice suhoor, okay, as in, mashallah, you had a whole table full of food, yeah, which, another thing that we need to bear in mind before I go on to this, yeah, is keep it simple when it comes to iftar and when it comes to suhoor, okay. SubhanAllah, I see people, they go all out when it comes to iftar, all out when it comes to suhoor. And personally, I'm against all of this. I mentioned this khutbah as well. All of these iftar dinners, okay, if it's for a noble purpose, for example, you have iftar dinner for the purpose of fundraising, etc. That's different. I'm talking about iftar dinners where you go out with your mates and it becomes like a little party, right? Personally, this is my personal. But I'm not saying it's haram, etc. This is my personal opinion, my personal preference. Okay. And that is that we should avoid all of these things in the month of Ramadan. Because when we are breaking our fast, as soon as iftar is done, our mind should be on Taraweeh. It's time to prepare for the night prayer now. Now you start going to restaurants and spending hours in the restaurants. You're going to miss your Isha Salah in Jama'ah, most likely. You're going to miss your Taraweeh. You're going to feel lazy because you're going to have so much food. Yeah? Whereas the whole objective of fasting is to eat less. But what happens? Yeah, Asian households, we know this, right? Months in advance, our mothers and our wives will start preparing the samosas. Yeah, and the whole freezer will be full of samosas and, all sorts of, mashallah, dishes. Okay, that you'll never eat those dishes the whole year. You'll only eat it in Ramadan. Subhanallah. But look at the irony. Ramadan is a month of abstinence from food, yet we're having more food. Okay? Which is why some people actually put on weight in the month of Ramadan. Look at the irony. We're meant to lose weight in the month of Ramadan. Okay? It's meant to be a detox. Okay? So we need to bear this in mind. So if you have something stuck between your teeth and it's smaller than a mustard seed, yeah, so it's very small, and you swallow it, while the fasting has begun and it's very, very small, then it's okay. It does not break the fast. It will break the fast if it is quite big. Now you have to judge it on what is big and what is small. All right, you'll be able to know. Okay, this is a bit. It's a bit of a big piece, right? And I swallowed it, and you're like, oh yeah, that's quite big. Then obviously it will break the fast. Okay, so the scholars mentioned it's a bit like a chickpea. Okay, a chickpea, you can use that as a kind of a measurement. Okay, to decide whether it is big or small. So these are some of the things that will not break the fast. Moving on now to the next section that you can title this, things which nullify the fast and necessitate qada. Yeah, things that nullify the fast and necessitate qada. ما يفسد الصوم ويوجب القضاء. طيب ما يفسد الصوم ويوجب القضاء. So the scholars they talk about there's two types of things that nullify the fast. Yeah, very important that we understand this. Two types of things that nullify the fast, or two results of breaking the fast. Certain things, if you do, it will break the fast, but you only have to do qada of it. You only have to make up the fast. There's no kafara for certain things. But then there's certain things that if you do, يوجب القضاء والكفارة. Yeah, it will necessitate making up the fast as well as kafara, which is expiation, which we're going to talk about. So the first section is regarding those things that will nullify the fast and necessitate qada only and not kafara. Okay? Number one, if he mistakenly broke his fast. Yeah, so this goes back to the discussion of forgetfulness and mistaken. Yeah, so the same example we'll use. Let's say he was rinsing his mouth. He consciously put water in his mouth, knowing that he's fasting, right? But his intention was just to rinse his mouth and spit it out again. But by accident, what happened? He swallowed it. That will break the fast, we know that. But now the question is, does he have to do qada and kafara or only qada? The answer is only qada. لماذا? Why? Because he did it mistakenly. He didn't do it on purpose, right? So you only necessitate qada. Number two, إذا أفطر بشبهة. If he broke the fast due to an ambiguity. Now this ambiguity, for example, he started eating or drinking thinking that the sun has set. Yeah? And let me give you a classical example. Let's say you're looking at the timetable, yeah? And you look at the wrong date. You look at the wrong date. Let's say today is, 18th of March, yeah? Let's say it's Ramadan already. Let's say, okay, today is Ramadan. And let's say we're at Maghrib time, right? And you're looking, okay, what time is iftar today? But by accident, you look at 19th of March. And 19th of March says that iftar is at 6:17 p.m. But actually Maghrib is at 6:15 p.m. Right? And what happened? Thinking that the sun has set based on that judgment, by accident, what did you do? You mistakenly read the timings and now you broke your fast. Right? This will nullify the fast. Why? Because the time is not started yet to break the fast. The sun is still above the horizon and not below the horizon. It hasn't set yet. Right? Even 1 minute, yes. Okay? As long as you made a mistake, all right, and you didn't do it on purpose. So you didn't, on purpose read the wrong timing. Okay? So it was a genuine mistake, then this will break the fast, but all you have to do is just make up the fast, do a qada after Ramadan, and that's it. No kafara, no penalty. Because again, it was a mistake, right? You didn't do it on purpose. Similarly, on the other hand, if you were doing suhoor, if you were partaking in suhoor, and you thought there's still time left for fajr, yeah? Again, same example, you read the wrong time. You think, oh, there's still 5 minutes left. Eating. And then, your wife comes to you saying, what are you doing? Time's up, what are you doing? Yeah, Fajr time has started already. Adhan of Fajr is gone. You're still eating. Yeah? So again, in this scenario, the fasting will be nullified, and all you have to do is to repeat that fast. There'll be no penalty. Why? Because it was a mistake. You did not do it on purpose. Okay. Number 3, to eat those things which is not normally eaten. Right? To eat those things that is not normally eaten by people. All right. Now, don't ask me why you would eat this. Right? The fuqaha mentioned, subhanAllah, every possible scenario. For example, let's say you ate barley or wheat. Yeah, as in we usually use wheat or barley to make something, right? Like bread or oats or something like that, right? But you ate it raw. Yeah, now don't ask me why. Let's use this as an example. You ate it raw, all right, and you swallowed it, whatever that substance may be. People don't eat this item, right? No one goes, buys barley and starts eating it. Okay? No one does this. Unless you're crazy. You buy barley and wheat from the shop. Why? Because your wife is gonna make a nice, cake or whatever, You understand? You're not gonna eat it raw. But let's say you did, for argument's sake, it will break the fast. But because it is not something that is normally eaten, right? The likelihood of you even having it is probably because you did it by mistake, right? Let's say, for example, something entered your mouth, right? Let's say you were yawning, and it entered your mouth and you swallowed it. Okay, let's say, let me give you a crazy scenario. Let's say you were yawning, yeah, and your child had something. Okay, now it's not proper food. It's something that you don't eat, right? It could be anything. Does everyone know what Play-Doh is? Play-Doh, yeah. So let's say they were playing with Play-Doh, yeah, and they started throwing it, right? And then there was a little Play-Doh, just threw it, yeah, in your mouth because you're yawning. And let's say you swallowed it, for example. Now that nullify the fast. Why? Because you swallowed something. Yeah, and fasting means to stay away from anything entering the body, whether it is food or not. Right? Now you swallow it, but because it wasn't food, it's not going to give you like energy. It's not like carbs or protein, is it? Right? It's just something random. It may even be harmful for your body. Right? So because it's not something that is normally eaten, it's going to nullify the fast, but there's no kafara, no penalty involved, because it's not something that you normally eat. So the likelihood of it being an accident is very high. Right? Moving on. And again, this is now a common question, with regards to medical issues. Okay, that if medicine, and this is the principle now. Okay, if medicine reaches the stomach or the brain, it will nullify the fast. Yeah, let me say that again. If medicine or any type of nutrition reaches the stomach or reaches the brain, okay, not using the mouth but using the nose, for example, okay, or using, I don't know, the ears, through any other means than the mouth, this will nullify the fast, and only qada will become necessary and not kafara. Okay, now why not kafara? Because you didn't use your mouth, which most likely means that you did it due to medical reasons, right? Now, a common example is, for example, there's certain nose drops that you use, okay, that some of that substance may reach the brain, okay, and it's medically proven as well that some of that substance of that nose drop will reach the brain, and because of that, because it reaches the brain and the brain will seek benefit from that medicine, or it reaches the stomach, okay, through any other means, this will nullify the fast, but it's not going to necessitate a penalty. All you have to do is qada. Make sense? Moving on. As for, now there's a common question. What about injections, for example? Yeah, injections. Like, let's say you got a doctor's appointment and you're fasting and they give you an injection. Okay? Does an injection break your fast? Anyone? أنتم المفتيون. لا ما شاء الله مفتي الشيخ الفقيه مراد ما شاء الله. نعم هو صحيح ما شاء الله ما شاء الله ما شاء الله, yeah. So he is a mufti. We're going to call him Mufti Murad now. Right? Yeah, it doesn't break the fast. Why? Because when you inject something, it goes straight into your bloodstream. Right? Does it enter the stomach? It doesn't. Right? Does it enter the brain? It doesn't. It goes straight into the veins. Make sense? Now there is a bit of ikhtilaf on this, so just bear that in mind. Some scholars they do disagree with this. Okay, so just bear this in mind. Similarly, blood test. With blood test, we will do qiyas on hijama, cupping. What do you say about cupping? Does it break the fast? Doesn't break the fast. So if you need to take a blood test, however, what I will say is, if you can avoid doing the blood test while you are fasting, it is better. Why? Because blood test might lead to the weakening of the body, right? We said that you should try to avoid anything that weakens the body. So if you can avoid the blood test while you are fasting, it is better for you to do so. But if, for example, the blood test is very urgent, you need to have a blood test quickly because you've got some condition, you don't know what's wrong with you, you're feeling ill, for example, then have the blood test. It's not going to nullify the fast. Okay? But make sure beforehand you prepare for it, you eat the right things, and make sure, for example, if you have that blood test that day, you will feel a bit weak. Make sure you take it easy the rest of the day. Don't work too much. Okay? And then when it's time for iftar, make sure you eat properly, eat good food. Okay? So these are some of the things that will break the fast, but will only necessitate qada. Okay? And lastly, one more thing is vomiting. Yeah, vomiting intentionally. And if the vomit was a mouthful. Okay, so those of you writing this down, very important, you write the whole thing, yeah? Vomiting intentionally, that's the key thing, intentionally. Okay, now don't ask me why. Why would someone intentionally vomit? All right, don't ask me. وَكَانَ الْقَيْءُ مِلْءَ الْفَمِ. And the vomit was a mouthful. Now, how do we define a mouthful? Right? It's very important that we understand this. How do we define a mouthful? Mouthful basically means that the vomit comes out by force. You can't hold it back. Yeah? So sometimes when you're very sick, you got food poisoning, it just gushes forth. You can't hold it back. That's what we define as mil'ul fam, right? Mouthful. If it's not like that, then it's not a mouthful. Okay? So if someone puts it in like that and tries to vomit, okay, and he starts vomiting, and it's a mouthful, it will nullify the fast. Okay? And only qada is going to be necessary and not kafara. طيب. Now moving on. ما يفسد الصوم ويوجب القضاء والكفارة. Okay? Those things that nullify the fast and they will necessitate both qada, making up the fast, as well as a penalty. And there's only a couple of things here. إذا أكل أو شرب متعمدا. Yeah, if he eats, drinks intentionally. He knows that he's fasting. He's like, you know what, sod this. can't be bothered. Just drinks water. All right. This will obviously nullify the fast. And because he did it on purpose, a penalty will be imposed on him. Okay, we're going to talk about what those penalties are later. Okay. Number 2, intimacy. Okay, with spouse. Okay, intimacy, again, intentionally will obviously nullify the fast, and kafara will be wajib. Okay, you will have to fulfill this penalty. Okay, so you can see what is the difference now between kafara and no kafara. It's all to do with the intention. Yeah, so simply put, if you do something intentionally, it's going to necessitate kafara, right? If you do something mistakenly, by accident, it's going to necessitate only qada. This is how we can summarize it. طيب? Now, we said kafara. What does kafara mean? What does this expiation penalty mean? So, if kafara is compulsory upon you, there are 3 choices that you have. Okay, and this is based on sequence. Okay, The first thing that you must do, تحرير رقبة, freeing a slave. فإن لم تستطع, if you can't do this, which obviously we can't, no one has slaves, okay, all right, so obviously slaves don't exist anymore, okay, in this country anyway. So there'll be no freeing of slaves, so you can't do that, so you go to the next one. The next choice is صام شهرين متتابعين بلا انقطاع. You will fast 2 consecutive months continuously, yeah, without any gaps. All right, without any gaps. Very difficult. 2 months consecutively without any gaps for one kafara. One kafara. Okay. Now again, فَإِن لَمْ تَسْتَطِعْ, if you can't do this, then the last option is أَطْعَمَ سِتِّينَ مِسْكِينًا. He will feed 60 poor people. Okay, he will feed 60 poor people. And the scholars mention that you will feed them, as in what we mean feed, doesn't mean that you feed them a date. Yeah, just give them a date, right? Doesn't mean that. Okay, what does it mean feeding 60 poor people? There's details to this that people usually are ignorant of. As fuqaha mention, you will feed them a morning meal and an evening meal, and you will feed them enough food to satisfy them. So not one date, a proper dish. Okay, biryani. Okay, Murad loves biryani. Yeah, biryani. Okay, something nice, something that will satisfy them. طيب. Now, if you cannot feed 60 people, there's another option as well, and that is that you will give these 60 poor people the value of half a sa'. Yeah, just write a sa' down. I'll explain what sa' means. Sa' is basically a measurement, which we'll go to the details later. Half a sa' of barley or wheat. Okay, sorry, of barley. Okay, understood? Half a sa' of, sorry, not barley, wheat, sorry, wheat. Yeah, wheat. Half a sa' of wheat. The value of half a sa' of wheat. Now, to make this easy, you know sadaqatul fitr? Yeah, zakatul fitr, sadaqatul fitr. Yeah, or fitrana, as some people call it. Yeah, is basically the value of that. Okay, so fitrana is according to this measurement, half a sa' of wheat, or 1 sa' of dates or barley. The value of 1 sa' of dates or barley to every single poor person. Yeah, so all 60. Now, what is sa'? 1 sa' equates to approximately 2.4 kilograms. Yeah, 2.4 kilograms. Now, sa' is basically a mode of measurement that they used to use in Medina. Okay. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam made dua, Allahumma barik lana fi sa'ina wa muddina. Oh Allah, bless us in our sa' and in our mud. Sa' and mud were 2 measurements that they used to use. Sa' used to be for weighing food items. Mud used to be for weighing liquid items. Okay. طيب. So half a sa' would be basically 1.2 kilograms. 1 sa' would be 2.4 kilograms. The value of that. Okay. But obviously nowadays, you know, you can contact charities, okay, and you say, look, I need to give kafara, can you sort this out for me? And they'll be able to sort you out, okay? They will have this option. Okay, so this is how kafara will be fulfilled. Now, very important note, yeah, that you can add this, you can put this in just as a note. If, for example, you've broken your fast, you did one of these things, your fast is broken. Yeah, so let's say, for example, by accident you swallowed, yeah, mistakenly, not forgetfully, mistakenly, you swallowed water. You've broken your fast now. The fast has become fasid. Yeah, the fast has become nullified. Does that mean now that you can spend the rest of the day eating and drinking? and enjoying yourself. I've broken my fast. Let's go to, mashallah, have a pizza. Okay, doesn't mean that. Okay, the scholars mention that he will still, yeah, that وجب عليه أن يمسك عن الأكل والشرب بقية ذلك اليوم تعظيما لحرمة شهر رمضان. طيب تعظيما لحرمة شهر رمضان. He will still stay away from eating and drinking, even though he is not in the state of fasting anymore, right? And this goes for sisters who are not fasting on their menstrual cycle, right? It goes for them as well. They should try to still avoid and imitate the fasting person. Why? To venerate, to show respect for the month of Ramadan and to show respect for the people who are fasting. Yeah? So if you mistakenly broke your fast and now you're no longer fasting, it doesn't mean that you can eat the rest of the day. It means that you still have to conduct yourself as if you are fasting, right? Why? Because out of respect for the fasting people and out of respect and honor for the month of Ramadan. Make sense? So this is what the scholars mention. And a person who doesn't do this, person who thinks that, you can eat and drink and enjoy himself just because he's broken his fast, okay, unless there is a necessity, let's say he's got a medical condition, this is all different scenarios, right? A person who does this, and just uses it as an excuse to enjoy himself, then this person will be sinful, okay, because now he's showing disrespect to the month of Ramadan and he's not honoring the month of Ramadan. Okay. Moving on, they also mention, for example, we're going to talk about traveling later. For example, if a traveler, as we know, there's an option for a traveler not to fast. Okay, so if a person is traveling, he doesn't need to fast. But what about midway? Let's say he started traveling, okay, and because he was traveling, he was not fasting. But then he landed in London in the afternoon. He landed in London in the afternoon, okay. He's become a muqim now, yes, but he's not fasting because he started the day in the state of safar. He was a musafir in the beginning of the day. Now he's become a muqim, okay. So he's still not fasting, even though he's become a muqim. But because he's become a muqim, out of respect for everyone, he will stay away from eating and drinking. Okay, out of respect for the month of Ramadan and out of respect for the people who are fasting. Okay, so this is another thing that they mention. Moving on now to the next topic. We're nearly done, inshallah. Permissible excuses for not fasting. Permissible excuses for not fasting. Meaning, upon whom is it permissible to not fast? What reasons does a person need to have in order for him to be excused from fasting? الأعذار المبيحة للفطر أو لعدم الصوم. Number one, so for these people, they don't have to fast. Okay, or if they're fasting and these things happen, then it will be permissible for them to nullify the fast. Okay, and when that excuse goes away, then they will just make up the fast. Okay, so number one, a sick person, an ill person. Now, when I mean sick, I don't mean like a sore throat or a flu. Yeah, I'm talking about proper sickness like diabetes. Proper sickness, illness. Right. For a sick person who fears an increase in his sickness, if he fasts, his sickness is going to get worse. Yeah, for example, a diabetic person. Okay, fasting is a very difficult time for a diabetic person who's diabetic. It's very difficult because now your sugar levels will be fluctuating. And if you're not fasting, your sugar levels will go very, very low. Now, when your sugar level is low, what's going to happen? Okay, you start feeling dizzy, you're going to get tired, you're going to get extremely thirsty. Okay, and all of these things are going to happen. And some people, in extreme cases, they even faint. Yeah, they become unconscious. If a person has this type of a sickness and he fears that by fasting his sickness is going to increase or his recovery is going to be delayed, then it will be permissible for him not to fast. Okay, it will be permissible for him not to fast. Number two, for a woman who is pregnant, if the doctor has advised her not to fast because it is going to be harmful for the baby, okay, it's going to be harmful for the development of the baby, then she will not fast and she will make it up after her pregnancy. Make sense? Now, they usually say that it is better to ask a Muslim doctor, because a Muslim doctor will be able to appreciate the importance of Ramadan. You know, when you ask a non-Muslim doctor, they'll be like, yeah, don't fast. It's okay, don't fast. You know, they don't know what the importance of fasting is. So if you have in your surgery a Muslim doctor, you should speak to the, you know, whoever's managing, the secretary or, you know, the receptionist, whoever, that can I have an appointment with this doctor because he's a Muslim or she's a Muslim, and then speak to that Muslim doctor and ask them to advise you. Or if you know a Muslim doctor in the society, go to that Muslim doctor, say, look, I've got this condition. These are my, you know, the details of my condition. Show them your medical reports, for example, so that they have an understanding of what your condition is. They'll be able to advise you properly, okay, because they know the importance of fasting. Now, if they say a Muslim doctor tells you that, okay, you can't fast because if you fast, you know, your illness is going to be very, very bad. It's going to increase, okay, and it's going to lead to other complications, then you will not fast. And you will make it up when you recover and if you recover, okay? Number three, for a breastfeeding woman, if she fears upon herself or upon her child harm, if she fears harm upon herself or upon her child, then it is permissible for her not to fast for that period of breastfeeding. Number four, one who becomes extremely thirsty or hungry that he fears that he will die. Now, you probably think, okay, that's a bit extreme. We do have these scenarios. Yeah, I remember a few years ago in India. Yeah, in India. It got so hot. It got so hot in India. We're talking 45 degrees. Extremely hot. Yeah. That certain people, they actually died in the state of fasting because of how thirsty they became. If only they knew these masail. Yeah, if only they knew these masail. If a person has that level of thirst and hunger that he fears he's going to die, right? He's going to perish. Then that person will be permitted to break the fast because of, you can say, extreme weather conditions, right? And then he will just make it up later on. Obviously, for a menstruating woman and for a woman in the state of nifas, postnatal bleeding, the bleeding after childbirth, it will be compulsory not to fast. Yeah? Compulsory not to fast. وَلَا يَصِحُ الصَّوْمُ مِنْهُمَا. Yeah, fasting is not going to be valid. And they will make it up, obviously, later. And I mentioned this last week. It's very important that our sisters make up their fasts before Ramadan begins. Obviously, Ramadan is now only a few days away. Okay, but this is a future reference. That if you have sisters, if you have fasts that you need to make up, very important that you make them up as soon as possible. All right? Especially like winter time, it's so easy. You know, winter time, take benefits of that time. Make up all of your fasts that you need to make up. You know, some people, ajib, they go like 50, 60 fasts from like 2015, 2014, they need to make up. I'm thinking, what are you doing? Yeah, make up your fast quickly, man. And I mentioned that some scholars, they mention that a person who delays, a woman who delays her qada for no reason, just pure laziness and carelessness, then there is going to be a sin upon that woman. Because she waited. Now another Ramadan has come, and most likely she's going to miss some more fast because now it's another month of Ramadan, and it's just piling up, right? So it's important that you stay ahead, inshallah, when it comes to making up your fasts. Now moving on to the topic of a musafir, yeah, one who's on a journey. We know that the Quran mentions that أياما معدودات فمن كان منكم مريضا أو على سفر فعدة من أيام أخر. Allah Azza wa Jal mentions that whosoever is sick and whosoever is on travel, then they can make up their fast on other days. Yeah, فَعِدَّةٌ مِّنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرَ. Okay? And then Allah Azza wa Jal, so based on this, basically, the scholars mentioned that it is permissible for a musafir to not fast. However, there is a discussion and there's a bit of detail to this. For example, because it all depends on when your travel starts. Let's say you are fasting. You're fasting. And at 12 p.m., for an emergency reason, you need to travel. Okay, you need to travel abroad. Okay, you travel to Europe, let's say. Emergency business, meeting that you have to attend. Okay, and it's in Germany, let's say. You're traveling. Now you started the fast. The question is now, when you start the travel, is it permissible for you to break the fast? Okay, this is the question. Fihi khilaf. Yeah. Some scholars mention yes. You break your fast now. Why? Because you're in the state of travel. However, other scholars mention no. Why? Because you have started your fast already. Can you see? You started your fast already. And Allah Azza wa Jalla says in the Quran, وَلَا تُبْطِلُوا أَعْمَالَكُمْ. Yeah, don't nullify your actions. Once you started, you finish. Other scholars mention, no, it's okay. Because you're now a traveler, you can take benefit from this dispensation. Okay? Personally, the opinion that I adhere to is that once you have started your fast, you should see it through. Okay? The dispensation of not fasting is when, for example, you are, let's say, in the night you travel. Okay, you reach your destination, and while in the state of safar, the fasting time begins. This is when you have an option from the beginning whether to fast or not. Okay, so this is what the other scholars mention, and this is personally what I adhere to. Now, there is a discussion with regards to what is more virtuous, in travel. Is it better to fast or better to not fast? Because you have an option, right? There's an option. If you want to fast, you can fast. But if you don't want to fast, you don't need to fast. لكن ما هو الأفضل? What's most preferred? What's most preferred is, according to some scholars, الصوم. الصوم أفضل. Why? Because it is أشق على النفس. أصعب على النفس. It is more difficult. And anything that is more difficult, more reward. Okay, and there's a hadith, that mentions the preferability of experiencing this difficulty. If you can bear it, then you should bear this difficulty because the ajr is going to be there. Other scholars may mention, like Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah. So in the Shafi'i madhab, in the Shafi'i school of thought, they say, Al-afdal alla tasum. It's better for you not to fast. Why? Because Allah Azza wa Jal has given you a dispensation, and anything that Allah permits is going to be the best. And there's also a hadith, لَيْسَ مِنَ الْبِرِّ الصِّيَامُ فِي السَّفَرِ. Now, لَيْسَ مِنَ الْبِرِّ الصِّيَامُ فِي السَّفَرِ. Fasting in travel is not from piety. So Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah and other scholars, other fuqaha, they give preferability to this hadith. But then there's also other ahadith that mention that كنا نغزو مع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في رمضان فمنا الصائم ومنا المفطر. نعم فمنا الصائم ومنا المفطر. That we went out on a expedition in Ramadan, and the Sahabi mentioned some of us were fasting and some of us were not fasting. Okay, which shows there's an indication in that it is better to fast. Because if it was not better to fast, then everyone will not be fasting. Can you see? So this is the details. Again, personally, the opinion I adhere to is that it is better to fast. Sorry, it is better, better to fast if you are in travel because it is more difficult, and more difficulty equals more reward. Now, the last discussion, I know we've gone. It's quite late, but we're finishing off now, inshallah. The last discussion is with regards to a person who is permanently ill. Yeah, he's permanently ill, or a very, very old person. a Shaykh al-Fani, as they say. Yeah, a very, very ill person, a very, very old person who cannot fast. And you know that he will never be able to fast. Yeah, let's say this guy, this old man, he's 90 years old, 95 years old, very, very frail, very weak. Now you know that he's not going to become young again, is he? He's only going to get older, right? So this is a permanent condition. Or if a person is so sick that he's permanently, for example, in a coma, and he's on life support machine, for example. Let's say he's on life support machine, and there is no chance. The doctors have said, look, there's no chance of us taking him off life support machine, right? This is going to be, he's basically like a, as they call, quite a disrespectful term, a vegetable. Okay, they say that he's basically waiting to die. And some people like that in hospital, they're waiting to die, right? No chance of recovery. If a person is like this, what do they do? Obviously, they will not fast, but they won't do qada as well. Why? Because they're not going to recover. The old man is not going to get young, right? So now what do they do? This is where the discussion of fidya comes in. Yeah, fidya. Now, what is fidya? What is fidya? Fidya is that you will give the amount of sadaqatul fitr, what we mentioned earlier, sadaqatul fitr, so half a sa' of wheat or 1 sa' of tamar, okay, dates, or sha'ir, barley, okay, to the poor. You will give the value of that. Yeah, so the amount of sadaqatul fitr to the poor for every fast that you miss. Yes. So his family will give it on his behalf. Okay? For every fast that he miss. So let's say, for example, sadaqatul fitr, okay, is 3-4 pounds. So for every fast that he missed, he will give that 3-4 pounds. This is one option. Another option is he will feed for every day a poor person. Again, 2 meals. Yeah, 2 meals. He will feed a poor person 2 meals for every fast that he miss. Okay? Now the important bit is, as the scholars mentioned, وَشَرُطُ الْفِدْيَةِ دَوَامُ الْعَجْزِ إِلَى الْمَوْتِ. Yeah? The condition of fidya is that incapability, that situation should continue until death. Whether it's the illness or whether it is the old age, it will continue till death. It's never going to change. Now, what happens if it does change? A miracle happens, and now the person has got better. So they thought that it's a permanent illness until there's no chance of recovering. He's going to die. People are waiting. He's going to die in the next week or in the next month, right? But then, miracle from Allah Azza wa Jal, he recovers. And now you've given fidya. Does he now need to go back and do qada? The scholars say yes. Why? لِأَنَّهُ قَادِرٌ. He is capable now. The rulings change because now he's become capable. He can make up those fasts, right? So if he becomes healthy, he will make up those fasts. Again, make sense? But the likelihood is a person who is in this situation, very likely that he's going to be in this situation until he passes away. Okay, so if it's a permanent sickness, yeah, very severe sickness, and he will never be able to have the strength again to fast, then you will give fidya on behalf of that old person or that sick person. The family usually do this. Okay, and this is regarding fidya. طيب. So inshallah, this brings an end to the basics of fasting, the fiqh of fasting. Usually at the end they talk about babul i'tikaf, yeah, the chapter of i'tikaf, but we'll leave that inshallah when Allah Azza wa Jal gives Masjid Hira a big masjid. Yes, inshallah. And when we do i'tikaf, inshallah, we will speak about i'tikaf, inshallah ta'ala. But one thing I would say is, the scholars mention that it is sunnah mu'akkadah ala al-kifaya, right? It is an emphasized sunnah, a communal sunnah, meaning that a few people from every community, right, if they can, if the situation allows, for some people from the community to sit in i'tikaf for the last 10 nights, right? To spend the last 10 nights in i'tikaf, right, as a fulfillment of that sunnah, okay, for the entire community. Now, if no one in the community sits in i'tikaf for no reason, okay, if there's a reason, it's different. If it's a valid reason, then it's different. But for no reason, it's just neglect, right? Neglect. Then the entire community will be liable for abandoning the sunnah, right? Which is very, very important. Every community must understand this. If the masjid is such that they can host i'tikaf, but for whatever reason they don't, right? And the people don't care about this as well. And let's say there is a community, no one sits in i'tikaf, then the entire community is going to be liable for abandoning a sunnah, all right? Which is obviously a sin. So this is something that we need to bear in mind. But with regards to the rules of i'tikaf, inshallah, we will study it another time. And these are some of the rules of fasting. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts our fast and that Allah Azza wa Jal grants us the ability to witness Ramadan. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه. Yeah, so basically, everyone, we have quite a few activities, inshallah, taking place in Ramadan. There's going to be a poster that is going to be released in the next couple of days with the details of what activities are taking place in Ramadan. I can assure you that it's jam-packed, alhamdulillah, okay? Just make dua for me. That's what I want, inshallah, that Allah gives me the strength, yeah, to speak, inshallah, yeah? But just briefly, on the Saturday dars, obviously, is not going to be after Maghrib or Isha. It's going to be after Dhuhr, inshallah. And we're going to be starting a new series, a Ramadan special, called Purification of the Hearts, okay? Where we're going to look at certain illnesses of the heart, spiritual illnesses, and how we can get rid of those spiritual illnesses, okay? And in particular, one Saturday, we're going to take a break from the series. Instead of doing purification of the hearts, we're going to do a seminar on the fiqh of zakah. Yeah, very important. Another very, very important. You know, many people don't know about the basics of zakah. So I urge you all to come, inshallah, and benefit from this seminar. Like I said, all of these details, there's other stuff that's going to be happening as well. So all of these details are going to be in our poster. And hopefully in the next couple of days, we're going to be sticking up the poster in the masjid. You will see it on our social media as well, inshallah ta'ala. Jazakumullah khair. Tomorrow we're going to be continuing with our Riyadh al-Salihin. Also, can I ask everyone, these pledges, yeah, no one's allowed to leave until you pledge something for our Ramadan Taraweeh, inshallah, at Spring West Academy, okay? So even if you pledge £10, pledge £10, but don't leave without pledging something, inshallah, okay? So please do this. We also need volunteers, yeah, so youngsters, especially in your Easter holidays, all right? I want all you youngsters, all right, to volunteer, inshallah, okay? Because we need a hand setting up Taraweeh in the hall, packing up, etc. Again, there's great virtue in that, inshallah ta'ala. So if you want to volunteer, come and speak to one of the brothers, inshallah, and they'll write your name down. Okay? Jazakumullah khair.